The Gal Empire was vast, older than most of the stars that burned in its core territories. For thousands of years they had ruled with unquestioned authority. Their fleets stretched from one spiral arm to another. Their archives overflowed with records of every battle, and their councils kept a tight grip on history itself. To the Gal, nothing was more important than control. They controlled trade, they controlled culture, and they controlled memory. Yet, hidden deep inside their archives, locked away and marked with warnings, were fragments of stories that even they could not fully erase. Stories about humans. Most young Gal officers had only heard whispers. To them, humans were a small, short-lived species from a backwater world that had once tried to challenge the Empire. The official records called it the Skirmish of Minor Sector 12. According to those texts, it was nothing more than a short rebellion crushed by the power of the Gal fleets. But the fragments told a different tale, one of fear, one of retreat, and of a single human warship that changed the course of history. That warship had no proper name in Gal records. Some called it the Forgotten Vessel, others called it the Ghost Ship. The strangest part was not its actions, but the way it resisted memory itself. Those who studied it claimed that data about it slipped away, logs became corrupted, descriptions lost detail. Witnesses, even when they tried, could not describe it clearly. The Gal rulers wanted the species forgotten, so they buried the fragments and silenced those who asked too many questions. But memory has a way of returning when fear is great enough. It began quietly on the edge of Gal space. A patrol fleet of 5 cruisers detected an unusual signal near a dark system. It was faint, almost like the echo of an old distress call. Captain Vor, an experienced officer, ordered his ships closer. At first there was nothing, just dead planets and broken asteroids. But then as they scanned deeper, they saw it. A ship. It did not match any known Gal design, nor did it match the signature of other alien powers. It was massive, black against the void, with strange patterns across its hull that seemed to shift when looked at directly. The scanners tried to record its size, but the numbers kept changing. Vor frowned at his display. "This is an error. The ship is not stable on sensors," he muttered. One of his lieutenants shook her head. "No, Captain. The error is not ours. The ship, it is interfering with our perception." Within moments, the crew felt uneasy. No one could say why. It was just a ship, not moving, not firing. Yet their hands trembled on the controls. Vor ordered a scan to determine its origin. The result came back incomplete. Only one word appeared in the ancient translation program: human. The bridge fell silent. That word had not been spoken in centuries. Before Vor could react, the ship moved. Slowly, without thrust, it drifted forward, and every Gal cruiser lost power at the same time. Lights dimmed, weapons went offline, and comms turned to static. Only life support remained. Panic spread across the fleet. Officers shouted. Technicians slammed fists on unresponsive consoles. Vor tried to stay calm, but he felt it too. A strange pressure in his mind, as if the ship was not only disabling their systems, but also reaching into their thoughts. The ship did not fire a single weapon. It did not need to. Its presence was enough. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, it vanished into faster-than-light travel, leaving the patrol fleet stranded. When engineers finally restored partial function, they discovered something even more disturbing. Every recording of the encounter was blank. Logs showed static. Sensor data was wiped. Even personal written notes faded, letters breaking apart on the screens. The only thing left was memory, and even that felt uncertain, like a dream fading upon waking. Vor sent an emergency message to the nearest Gal command station. His words were rushed, his voice uneven. "There is a ship," he said. "Not Gal, not any power I know. It erased our data. It paralyzed our systems. It is human." The message was received, but by the time it reached the High Council, it was already corrupted. The only word left was the one that mattered: human. At the capital of the Gal Empire, the council gathered in their grand chamber, a vast dome of silver and glass. Each counselor represented entire sectors of space, and each carried the pride of centuries of dominance. Yet when the word human echoed across the chamber, a silence fell heavier than any command. Counselor Shear, the eldest among them, leaned forward. His eyes were cold, his voice measured. "We locked away the records for a reason. This cannot be true. Humans are gone. Their colonies scattered, their fleets dismantled. There is no human warship, but another counselor shook his head. We buried the records because we feared them. Do not deny it. The fragments spoke of a ship that even we could not comprehend. Perhaps it has returned. The chamber erupted in argument. Some dismissed the story as false, others demanded immediate military response. A few, however, sat in silence, haunted by the half-remembered whispers from their training years. The Gal Empire prided itself on strength, but strength is brittle when touched by fear. Meanwhile, across the Empire, rumors spread faster than official statements. Traders whispered of a ghost ship seen on distant routes. Miners claimed entire stations had gone dark after a shadow passed nearby. Soldiers muttered about humans returning for revenge. Fear grew not because of what was known, but because of what was not. The warship left no records, no data, no clear descriptions. Every attempt to define it collapsed. And in that void of certainty, imagination painted the darkest pictures. The forgotten vessel had returned, and with it, so did the question the Gal had tried so hard to erase. What are humans truly capable of? The patrol fleet under Captain Vorn never fully recovered. Though their ships were eventually repaired and returned to service, the crews were changed. Many resigned, unable to face the void again. Some refused to speak of what they saw, while others repeated their story in hushed tones, warning anyone who would listen. Vor himself became restless. He could not sleep without seeing that ship in his mind, drifting silently, overwhelming everything around it without firing a single shot. He tried to write reports, but his words slipped away. Sentences lost meaning. Pages became blank. The more he tried to explain, the less he remembered. Yet one feeling remained, stronger than any lost detail. Fear. Fear of a ship too powerful to remember. Thus began the first whispers of a new age. The Gal thought they had erased humanity's place in history, but now, on the edge of their empire, an old truth stirred again. The warship had returned, and this time, the galaxy would not be able to forget. The Gal Empire did not like mysteries. Mysteries meant weakness, and weakness was not allowed to exist within their borders. When Captain Vor's damage report reached the capital, the council wasted no time. They ordered a large fleet to investigate. It was not a small patrol this time, but a full strike group, 40 ships led by Admiral Rin, a veteran known for her cold discipline. She believed in numbers, in order, and in the unshakable power of the Gal fleets. To her, one unknown vessel, even if human, could not challenge the Empire. Her ships entered the edge system where Vor had first seen the warship. The space there was quiet, empty, with only a dim red sun burning weakly. Scanners searched, but at first found nothing unusual. Crews began to whisper, wondering if the story had been exaggerated. Some even laughed at the thought of humans, calling them ancient ghosts. But then the shadows changed. At first, it looked like a trick of light across the asteroid belt, but as the fleet moved forward, the shadows grew into form. A black shape emerged slowly, as if it had always been there, hidden in plain sight. The human warship drifted silently, larger than any Gal vessel, its hull covered with strange patterns that rippled like liquid metal. Admiral Rin narrowed her eyes. She felt an odd pressure in her mind, the same as Vor had described, though she did not yet know the details. "Target it," she commanded. "Full scan. Record everything." "I want complete data," her officers obeyed. Scanners locked on. Numbers filled the screens, and for a moment the Gal fleet believed they had control. But then, line by line, the data began to vanish. Ship class unknown, size fluctuating, weapon count undefined. Within seconds, every detail had erased itself, leaving blank screens. "Admiral," one officer whispered, "it does not want us to know." Rin clenched her jaw. "Nonsense. Fire a warning shot. We will see how it reacts." A cruiser obeyed, sending a beam of green plasma toward the silent ship. The beam struck the warship's hull and vanished, absorbed without a trace. There was no explosion, no damage, not even a spark. The ship remained still, then without warning it moved. Not with speed, but with presence. Its engines did not flare, yet it slid through space, closing distance between itself and the Gal fleet. As it moved, Gal ships lost power one by one. First weapons, then shields, then engines. Lights dimmed across entire cruisers. Panic rippled through the formation. "Admiral, systems offline. We cannot maintain formation." Rin slammed her fist on her chair arm. "Hold position." Do not break. But even she felt the weight pressing down. It was as if the warship was not simply disabling their ships but bending their will. Her officers could hardly look at the vessel. Some turned their heads, others covered their eyes, afraid of what they might see if they stared too long. Then the warship's hull began to glow faintly. Symbols, human in origin, appeared across its surface. They were not words the gal could understand, but they carried a meaning that every mind seemed to feel. Warning. Suddenly the gal fleet's comms crackled. A deep voice echoed through every ship, not in their own language but in something universal, something felt rather than heard. Leave. That single word froze them all. Admiral Rin's officers looked at her with fear, waiting for orders. For the first time in her long career, she felt uncertainty. The warship had not fired a single weapon, but her entire fleet was powerless. If it wanted, it could destroy them all with ease. Rin made her choice. Fall back, she ordered, voice hard though her hands trembled. We cannot fight this. Not yet. The gal fleet retreated, drifting away with what little power they had. The human warship did not chase. It simply watched, silent and immovable, until the gal ships were gone. Back at the capital, the council was shaken. Reports from Admiral Rin were filled with gaps. Logs were blank, recordings erased. The only clear detail was the single word that remained in every mind. Leave. Councillor Shear slammed his hand on the table. This is unacceptable. One ship cannot threaten the Empire. We must destroy it before rumors spread further. But another councillor, younger and more cautious, spoke softly. It already spreads. Traitors speak of it. Colonies whisper about it. Even our soldiers doubt. How do you fight an enemy that erases your memory of it? How do you command troops who cannot describe what they fear? The chamber fell into uneasy silence. Meanwhile, across the outer colonies, ordinary gal citizens were already living with the rumors. Stories grew each day, changing with every retelling. Some said the warship was a ghost, piloted by the spirits of dead humans. Others said it was alive, a creature of metal and mind. The truth mattered less than the fear it carried. Whole mining outposts refused to work. Merchant fleets altered their routes, refusing to pass near the system. Even without firing a weapon, the warship was striking at the heart of the Empire, its confidence. Admiral Rin was summoned again, this time to lead another mission. She argued against it, warning the Council that more ships would not change the outcome, but she was overruled. The Empire believed in force, and so force was sent. This time it was not 40 ships, but 100. They entered the sector in tight formation, ready for war. The human warship appeared once more, drifting calmly, waiting for them. The gal fleet unleashed everything at once. Beams of plasma, torpedoes of energy, missiles that could split moons apart, all fired toward the lone vessel. The space around it blazed with destruction, and then nothing. When the light faded, the warship was untouched. Every weapon had dissolved before reaching its hull. As if space itself rejected the attack, the warship finally moved again, and for the first time it revealed its true power. A pulse of light rippled from its core, invisible to the eye but felt in every mind. Gal officers screamed as their consoles went dark. Engines died, shields collapsed, entire ships floated helplessly, unable to move. Yet still, the warship did not destroy them. It passed among them like a shadow, silent, slow, untouchable. As it moved, its voice filled the void once more. Remember us. Those words echoed long after the warship disappeared again. Crews who returned from that mission could not describe what they had seen. Their logs were blank, their scans empty. Yet every one of them remembered the words. And with those words, a terrifying truth spread. Humans had not only built a warship of incredible strength, they had built one that could not be forgotten, even as it erased the memory of itself. In hidden corners of the Empire, gal scientists began to whisper to each other. Some remembered the old fragments buried in archives. They spoke of the first war between humans and the gal centuries ago. They spoke of how humans had fought with desperation, creating weapons that bent the very rules of thought and memory. One scientist, an elder named Renal, spoke to his students in secret. Do not fear the guns of humans. Fear their will. They do not build ships to win battles. They build ships to survive. This vessel is not here to fight us. It is here to remind us. His students asked, remind us of what? Renal's eyes darkened. That humans cannot be erased. The Gal High Council met again, more divided than ever. Some demanded full mobilization of the Empire's fleets, convinced that overwhelming numbers could still crush the warship. Others urged caution, fearing that even to fight would be to fall into a trap. But beneath their arguments, every counselor felt the same truth: fear, because the human warship had not yet attacked. It had not destroyed their fleets. It had only whispered 2 words, and already the Empire trembled. The human warship had appeared twice now, and each time the Gal Empire had been powerless before it. Fleets had been disabled, weapons made useless, and data erased. The Council tried to control the story, but news always slipped through. Whisper by whisper, rumor by rumor, the Empire remembered something it had tried hard to forget. The humans. Few alive still remembered the old war. It had happened centuries ago, long before most current leaders had taken power, but the fragments in hidden archives told enough. Humans had been different from other species. They were fewer in number, their worlds less rich, their bodies weaker compared to many others. By logic, they should never have been a threat, and yet they had been. In a small university far from the capital, an old Gal scholar named Renal studied those fragments. He was not a soldier, but his mind was sharp and patient. He gathered what little information he could find: damaged files, broken maps, half-erased testimonies. Piece by piece, he formed a picture of what had really happened. He told his students, "The Empire lies when it says humans were weak. They were never weak. They were desperate, and desperation makes strength." The students leaned closer, listening in secret. It was dangerous to speak of such things openly, but curiosity burned brighter than fear. Renal continued, "Long ago, when the Gal Empire first expanded into their sector, humans resisted. Not with numbers, not with power, but with cleverness. They fought in ways our fleets did not expect. They hid in storms, used gravity fields as traps, even turned broken moons into weapons. Every time we thought them finished, they found a way to return." One student frowned. But how could such a small species stand against the Empire for so long? Renal's voice dropped lower. "Because they built something new, something beyond ships and weapons. They built a memory of themselves that could not be destroyed." The students whispered to each other, asking what he meant. Renal only gave them a name, spoken with care, as if it itself carried power: the Aegis Eternal. The Gal called it the Forgotten Vessel, the Ghost Ship, the Shadow. But to humans it had been named with pride: the Aegis Eternal. It was their last hope in the war, a creation of desperation and brilliance combined. Its design was unlike anything before it. Not just strong armor or powerful guns, but something deeper. A system that attacked memory and perception itself. Any who saw it could not keep clear records. Any who fought it soon doubted their own senses. It was not only a weapon of war, but a weapon of fear. When the Aegis first entered battle, entire Gal fleets broke apart without a shot fired. Captains gave orders, but crews disobeyed, trembling at what they could not describe. Ships turned and fled, too shaken to continue. The Empire had won wars before, but this was different. This time it was not only ships that broke, but certainty. The Gal, for the first time in their long history, were forced to feel helpless. At the Gal Council, some still tried to deny it. They insisted the human warship was only a myth, a story made larger by fear, but others knew the truth. Records had been destroyed, yes, but memories lingered. The oldest counselors still remembered the silence after the last battle, when the Gal had agreed to peace not because they could not win, but because they could no longer face the humans' will. After that, the Aegis Eternal vanished. Some said the humans had hidden it, storing it in deep space. Others whispered that it had developed a mind of its own, continuing on without a crew. Whatever the case, the Empire thought it gone forever, until now. Admiral Rin sat in her quarters, staring at the empty screen of her console. She tried to write her report again, but every word faded before it finished. Frustration burned inside her. She had never lost control in battle, never once doubted her power. But now, she had faced something that could not be fought. Her officers avoided her eyes. They whispered when they thought she did not hear. She was the one who had ordered retreat. She was the one who had watched her fleet fall silent. Shame cut deeper than any wound, and yet inside that shame there was something else, a thought she could not shake. Why did it not destroy us? The warship had the power. It could have torn apart every ship, burned every fleet, but it had not. It only spoke 2 words. Remember us. Rin leaned back in her chair, whispering the words aloud. Remember us? It was not a threat. It was a demand. A demand to be remembered even by their enemy. She realized then that the warship was not a weapon of conquest. It was something else. A messenger. Across the Empire, humans still lived in small, scattered colonies. Most were forgotten, kept under watch but never destroyed. The Gal considered them unimportant. But now, with the Aegis Eternal's return, those colonies stirred. On a quiet planet near the edge of Gal space, a small human settlement gathered in secret. They had heard the rumors, too. An elder, gray-haired and tired, stood before the crowd. You hear the stories, he said. The ship that walks among stars again. The ship of our ancestors. Do you know what it means? A young voice answered. It means, we are not forgotten. The elder nodded. Yes, it means the Empire cannot erase us. Our spirit is still alive. And if the Aegis Eternal has returned, then perhaps our time has come as well. The humans cheered. Hope burning where once there was only silence. Back in the Gal capital, Councillor Zir argued for total war. We cannot allow this legend to spread. If humans rise again, the Empire will lose control. We must crush their colonies before they gather strength. We must destroy the warship, no matter the cost. But others hesitated. One younger councillor said softly, and if we cannot, what then? What if every fleet we send falls silent as the others did? What if the more we fight, the stronger the memory grows? The debate grew fierce, but no answer came. For the first time in centuries, the Gal Council felt powerless. Meanwhile, the Aegis Eternal continued its journey through the stars. It appeared at random systems, never staying long, never firing. Yet everywhere it passed, Gal ships lost power and fear grew. Miners abandoned stations. Merchants turned away. Soldiers whispered that the ship was unstoppable. And across the Empire, one phrase spread from mouth to mouth, repeated in every corner. Remember us. The words carried no weapon, no fire, but they struck harder than any blade. Because deep inside, even the Gal knew the truth. The humans had not been erased. They had left a legacy too strong to forget. In a quiet archive room, Renal finished his lecture to the students. They were pale, their minds full of fear and wonder. Why? One asked. Did the Gal try to bury this truth? Why not admit what happened? Renal looked at them sadly. Because fear controls better when it is hidden. If you tell people the humans nearly defeated us, they will question the Empire's strength. If you erase the truth, you can pretend it never happened. But truth always returns. He placed his hand on an old damaged data pad, one of the last fragments left. On its cracked screen, 2 words glowed faintly, stubborn against the erasure. Aegis Eternal. Renal whispered, and now, the truth has returned with it. Thus, the galaxy began to change. The Gal had ruled with certainty for ages, but certainty was fading. The humans were rising again, not with fleets, not with armies, but with memory, and memory, once awakened, could not be controlled. The Aegis Eternal had returned, carrying the legacy of a people the Empire tried to erase. And the galaxy would soon learn why humans were feared. The Aegis Eternal no longer hid in the shadows. It drifted openly through Gal space, silent and unstoppable. Wherever it appeared, fear followed. It did not fire weapons, nor did it destroy stations, but every fleet that approached it went dark. Every system it touched was left in chaos. The Gal Empire was built on order, but order was now crumbling. In the mining colonies of the Outer Ring, workers refused to return to the fields. They claimed they had seen the warship pass by, drifting between asteroids. One worker told his overseer, "It did not shoot. It did not speak. But I felt it. I felt eyes watching me, and I knew humans are back." The overseer tried to dismiss it as nonsense. But when he turned to check the records, he found the logs empty. No data remained of that hour, no images, no reports, only silence. And in that silence, fear grew. Soon whole colonies abandoned their posts. Ships left docking bays half-loaded. Trade routes went quiet. The Empire began to lose not only control, but also trust. In the military, discipline broke down. Young soldiers whispered in their bunks about the human warship. Some refused to board their cruisers, terrified of facing it. Even admirals, proud and hardened by decades of war, avoided speaking its name. They called it the Shadow, the Ghost, or simply it. One fleet commander tried to rally his crews, shouting, "We are Gal. We have ruled for centuries. No old ship can defeat us." His voice was strong, but his eyes betrayed doubt. He had been there in the second encounter when his weapons had vanished into nothing. Deep inside, he knew the truth. This was not a fight they could win with guns. On human colonies, however, the mood was different. For generations, humans had lived quietly, watched by Gal officials, their freedoms limited. They were treated as minor, almost forgotten. Children grew up hearing their grandparents' stories of the old war. But most thought those stories were myths. Now, the myths had returned. In one settlement hidden on a forest world, the humans gathered in a hall made of stone and wood. A woman stood before them, her eyes bright with hope. "The Aegis Eternal has returned," she said. "Our ancestors built it, and now it speaks for us again. The Empire wanted us silent, but the ship will not let them forget. We are not shadows. We are not weak. We are human." The hall echoed with cheers. For the first time in centuries, the people felt more than survival. They felt pride. Young men and women began to train with old weapons. Engineers worked secretly on ships long left unused. Colonies that once feared speaking too loudly now whispered to each other of rebellion. The warship had not called them directly, but its message was clear enough. Remember us, and they did. In the Gal capital, the council grew desperate. Reports came daily, each more troubling than the last. Entire fleets abandoned posts. Colonies refused to send resources. Soldiers deserted. Councillor Shear shouted in anger during one meeting, "We must destroy that ship at any cost. It spreads like poison. It does not fire, yet it wins battles. How long before humans rise fully against us?" Another councillor, pale and shaking, replied, "We sent 100 ships already. They fired everything we had, and still it moved through them untouched. If we send 1,000, will it change? Or will we simply lose 1,000 more?" The council chamber filled with silence. They all knew the truth. Their empire was not losing because of weapons. It was losing because of fear. The Aegis Eternal appeared again, this time near a busy trade route. Dozens of merchant ships froze as its shadow fell across them. Their captains begged for mercy, but the warship did not fire. Instead, it opened communication for the first time since its return. A single phrase echoed across every channel, in every tongue understood by all. "Remember us." The words repeated again and again, until even the most stubborn Gal traders fled in panic. Some ships abandoned their cargo entirely, leaving it to drift in space. Others swore they saw human shapes walking on the warship's deck, though no one could prove it. The Empire's wealth depended on trade, but trade collapsed. And with every day, the message spread further. Admiral Rin, sitting alone in her quarters, watched the chaos unfold. She had once believed the Empire unshakable. Now she saw it cracking piece by piece, and deep inside she felt something she had never felt before. Respect. She whispered to herself, "They fight without fighting. They win without weapons." She wondered what the warship's true goal was. It could destroy the Empire, but it had not. It only demanded remembrance. Perhaps she thought this was not about war at all. Perhaps it was about history, about forcing the Gal to admit what they had tried to erase. The thought unsettled her more than any battle. In secret, Admiral Rin began to search the old archives. She pulled fragments of human history, risking punishment if discovered. What she read shocked her. Humans had not fought the Gal for dominance. They had fought for survival. Against impossible odds, they had built the Aegis Eternal not to conquer, but to remind. She read one damaged human transmission, the last before the ship vanished centuries ago. "We do not ask for fear. We ask only to be remembered." The words struck her deeply. She began to understand why her fleets had failed. They had tried to fight the ship as if it were a weapon, but it was not a weapon. It was a voice. Across the Empire, terror grew. Colonies sent fewer resources. Soldiers muttered about surrender. Citizens began to question the Empire's strength. Even in the heart of the capital, whispers of humans spread through the streets. The Gal Empire had survived countless wars. But this was different. This was not a war of fire and steel. This was a war of memory. And memory was harder to kill than any army. Meanwhile, human colonies grew bolder. On one hidden world, a small group of rebels launched their first strike. They destroyed a Gal supply ship, leaving behind only one message painted across its broken hull: "Remember us." The Empire was shaken. For the first time in centuries, humans had struck back directly. And though the strike was small, it was enough to prove a greater truth. The humans were no longer afraid. More uprisings followed. Not large, not yet, but enough to weaken the Empire's grip. Farmers refused to send food. Miners sabotaged Gal equipment. Old human ships, repaired in secret, began to fly again. The Aegis Eternal had not ordered them. It did not need to. Its presence alone was enough to awaken their courage. In the council chamber, arguments turned to panic. Councillor Shear shouted, "This is rebellion. The humans are rising. If we do not crush them now, the Empire will fall." But another councillor, weary and broken, whispered the words that none dared speak aloud. "Perhaps it is already falling." Silence filled the room. The Aegis Eternal appeared once more, drifting over a Gal colony world. Citizens rushed into the streets to see it hanging above the clouds, enormous and dark, casting its shadow across entire cities. The Gal soldiers tried to rally, but their weapons went dead. Vehicles shut down. Towers of communication fell silent. Then the ship's voice came, soft but unshakable, carried into every mind at once. "Remember us." Some Gal fell to their knees in terror. Others ran, dropping their weapons, and among the humans living in that colony, tears filled their eyes. For them, it was not terror. It was hope. Hope that the galaxy would finally remember who they were. And so the Empire trembled. Fleets avoided battle. Colonies rebelled. Citizens doubted. The Gal Empire had ruled with fear for centuries. Now fear was turned against them, and it spread faster than fire. The Aegis Eternal had not fired a single shot, but it had done more damage than any weapon could. It had awakened memory. And across the stars, that memory was growing into something stronger: rebellion. The Gal Empire had never faced such fear. Entire fleets refused to enter sectors near the Aegis Eternal. Colonies whispered in panic, and even high-ranking officials avoided speaking of it. Yet, despite all the terror, the warship did not destroy a single human settlement. It did not fire weapons. It did not demand tribute. Its purpose, if it had one, seemed simple yet impossible to understand. Remember us. Admiral Rin was summoned to the capital for the final council meeting. She had survived multiple encounters with the ship, witnessing firsthand how entire fleets went dark and systems failed. Her mind carried the weight of defeat and awe. "You have faced it," Councillor Shear said sharply. "And yet you are here. Speak plainly. Can the Gal destroy this ship?" Rin shook her head. "No, not by force. Our weapons, our numbers, even our best strategies, they do nothing. It moves through us without effort. It is not a ship built to fight fleets. It is something else," the council murmured. Some looked shocked. Others pale. "What is it then?" Shear demanded. Rin hesitated, then said, "It is human will made visible. Our fleets failed because we tried to fight a weapon. This is not a weapon. This is a message." A younger counselor leaned forward. "A message? What message?" Rin's eyes met his. "I do not know all of it, but whatever it is stronger than fear. It is something the Empire cannot erase." Meanwhile, the Aegis Eternal drifted silently across the star systems. Entire fleets fled its path. Colonies surrendered at the sight of it, not because it attacked, but because its presence demanded recognition. On one distant world, a small group of human rebels watched from a hilltop. They had repaired old ships and hidden weapons, but none of that mattered. They were not waiting to fight, they were waiting to be remembered. And when the Aegis passed above them, they felt something ancient stir within their hearts. Courage. A young girl whispered, "It is us." "It is finally us again," her grandfather nodded. "Not just us. All humans. The galaxy will see us whether they want to or not." Back in the capital, the council scrambled to prepare a final offensive. They gathered their largest fleet, over 500 ships, the finest ever built. Each ship carried their most advanced weapons, more destructive than anything the Gal had ever launched. Admiral Rin led them. Her hands were steady, but her mind was heavy with doubt. She knew from experience what would happen. No matter the number, the warship would not be harmed. Yet she obeyed the orders. She could not defy the council, and she could not abandon her fleet. As the massive formation entered the edge system where the Aegis Eternal had last been seen, silence fell. For once the fleet did not chatter. There was no music, no chatter of morale, only the cold, tense hum of engines. Then, as if it had been waiting, the Aegis Eternal appeared. Its massive hull gleamed faintly in the starlight, patterns shifting along its surface unreadable and alive. Every Gal officer who saw it felt the same thing: unease, dread, awe, and beneath it all a strange understanding. The fleet fired. Energy beams, missiles, torpedoes all converged on the warship. But just as before, nothing touched it. Weapons dissolved before impact. Shields flickered but remained untouched. Even the fastest ships could not approach it. Then the Aegis Eternal opened communication. A voice calm and unshakable filled the minds of every Gal officer, every soldier, every citizen monitoring the battle. We are humans. We endure, we survive. We do not ask for fear, nor do we ask for war. We ask only this: remember us. The words carried weight. They were not loud. They were not violent. Yet every mind that heard them trembled, unable to ignore the truth. The Gal soldiers lowered their weapons, and even admirals felt their resolve waver. For the first time, the Empire realized something it had never admitted. Humans were never weak. Humans never yielded, and humans had built the Aegis Eternal not to destroy, but to endure, so that memory of their courage could never be erased. Admiral Rin lowered her own weapons. Her heart pounded, but her mind became clear. She understood now why the warship had not destroyed them, why it had disabled fleets without a fight. It was not conquest. It was testimony. This is not war, she whispered aloud. It is history alive. Even Counselor Shear, standing behind her, could not argue. He felt it too. The weight of human legacy, too strong to challenge with fleets or weapons. The humans on the outer colonies celebrated quietly. They did not need fleets to win. The presence of the Aegis Eternal reminded the galaxy of who they were. Long-forgotten colonies, scattered worlds, small ships all rose in courage. They repaired old stations, trained new pilots, and sent messages to other human settlements. The warship did not command them. It did not guide them. It only existed, and its existence was enough. One old man, watching from the top of a cliff on a forested planet, said to a child beside him, "Do you see? They feared us before. They will remember us now. This is why we never gave up." The child smiled, eyes wide. "We are humans," she said. "Yes," the old man replied. "And we always will be." Back at the capital, the Gal Empire faced the unthinkable. Fleets were useless. Colonies whispered rebellions. Citizens no longer trusted the Empire's power. And in the sky, the Aegis Eternal drifted without threat, without attack, a silent monument to human endurance. The council met again. This time no one argued. They understood the message without needing to hear it twice. Humans could not be erased. Humans could not be conquered. And humans would not be forgotten. Counselor Shear, the once proud leader, bowed his head. "Perhaps we have learned our lesson too late," he said quietly. The Aegis Eternal did not stay. Slowly, silently, it drifted toward the unknown regions of the galaxy. No one knew where it went or if it carried anyone aboard. All that remained was its presence in memory, and its message echoing in every mind. Remember us. The Gal fleets returned to their home systems, weaker not by force, but by realization. The Empire had survived countless wars, yet it could not survive the courage and memory of humans. Stories spread among the stars. Every colony, every system, whispered the legend of the human warship that could not be touched, that could not be destroyed, and that could not be forgotten. For humans, it was a triumph not of weapons but of spirit. They had endured centuries of fear, suppression, and smallness in the eyes of others, yet now the galaxy remembered them. And somewhere, far from prying eyes, the Aegis Eternal drifted on, silent, powerful, a monument not to death, not to destruction, but to humanity itself. Every pulse of its engines, every ripple across its hull carried the same message: humans endure. Humans fight in ways others cannot understand. And above all, humans leave a mark that no empire, no matter how vast, can erase. Admiral Rin watched the fleet return home, changed forever. She had faced the impossible, and she had learned that strength was not always in numbers or weapons. Sometimes strength was in will and endurance and memory. The Empire would rebuild. Fleets would fly again. But they would never forget the lesson the humans had taught, and the galaxy finally would remember the humans.